Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another episode of the Think Clinical podcast. My name is Hamza. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking our videos. Thank you for sharing what we do here. It's amazing to be here once again to share yet another very exciting episode with you. And today we are going to be looking at something really important. And I remember this very clearly because it's one of the things that really resonated with me when I started running my own business. When I was thinking about bringing in my first employee, what mistakes did I make? What did I need to do then, or what do I know now that would have informed what I did then? And this is a very important thing because today what we are going to be discussing induces a lot of anxiety, especially new business owners in the healthcare space. So you're a doctor, you just started your clinic, and you're now thinking about bringing in your first employee. What do you need to do in order to get this right? Because again, this is not a perfect world, so you might do all these things and it still turns out to be a disaster. But this heavily increases your chances of making sure you have the right person walking through your door, especially for your first employee. Now, the statistic that most people don't know is that according to the Society of Human Resource Management, the average cost of a bad hire is 5 times their annual salary. So in healthcare, for instance, where your first hire might be earning anything between $40,000 to $60,000, we are talking about $200,000 to $300,000 mistake when you factor in lost productivity, you factor in patient experience issue, you factor in rehire costs. This is a very expensive process. But yet 23% of healthcare practice owners admit they made the first hire out of desperation. They wait until they actually do need that person. They wait until they are drowning. They wait until they are turning away patients. They wait until patients are becoming upset with them because they don't have capacity before they start making that decision. But this is important, and this decision has to be made way before that period when you're drowning. And most people just start the hiring process by going to Indeed or LinkedIn and just posting a job. And this definitely speaks to the backwardness of the process of what you should be doing. Your hiring process actually has to start with a document you create. You have to be very intentional about who you are going to be bringing through your door, and you have to do this 3 to 6 months ahead of time. You don't wait until you are drowning. And then later in this conversation, we're going to talk about some indicators for you to identify that you are beginning to have a need to bring in somebody. But this is important because you are able to now anticipate and properly prepare for who you are bringing through the door. I call this document, and this is something I'm sharing with you, the role architecture document, because this is what it must include. Your first thing is what we call the 80-20 task breakdown. What does this mean? What you need to do in this document is, first of all, to list all or every task that this person you are trying to hire will do. And again, as I say, you're doing this 3 to 6 months ahead because you're starting to look ahead of time. And then you identify the 20% of tasks that will drive 80% of the value you are looking for in this person. Again, you are going to list all the tasks this person is doing. So if you are hiring for a patient care coordinator, you're going to be listing all these things that this patient care coordinator needs to be doing. But you are also going to identify 20% of these tasks that you listed that would drive 80% of the value. So a study from Stanford on small business hiring found that practices with clearly defined high impact tasks saw 34% better first year retention. So a front desk person, for instance, as I said, if you are trying to hire this person for, let's say, a dental office, right? High impact tasks might be 1, patient check-in experience. You want that to be a big priority in what you do or what this person does in this role. The second task that you want to definitely experience is insurance verification system or insurance verification accuracy, because what this does is that it actually gives the patient peace of mind knowing that they have the right breakdowns for their treatment. They are not surprised later on with additional costs or additional expenses that they did not plan for. They're able to have a more holistic and a better experience when they come in. The third thing you might want to add is schedule optimization, making sure that the doctor's schedule is full, at least 85 to 95% capacity full. You are making sure that you are keeping them busy. These are high priority tasks. These are the 20% of tasks, for instance, a patient care coordinator, that would drive 80% of the value. Now, when you look at things like filing, you look at things like supply ordering, you look at things like general phone answering, they do have an impact, but not as high as the first three things that I just mentioned. So these are some of the things that you need to first of all get clear. And why does this matter? Because you will interview and evaluate candidates primarily on their capability and enthusiasm for these high impact tasks. You are not going to tell them these are high impact tasks, but you're going to be evaluating them based on how they respond to some of these or how they align with some of these high impact tasks. The second thing is a culture of non-negotiables. Okay, so you are looking at, so Brené Brown's research on organizational culture found that teams with 3 to 5 clearly defined cultural values outperformed those with vague cultural aspirations by 47% on engagement scores. What does this mean? It simply means that you need to write down in this your document, you need, that's what I call the role architecture document. You need to write down 3 to 5 non-negotiable cultural traits. And these are not corporate jargons that you're just going to throw around, like saying you have to be innovative and you have to be passionate. These are very vague. You have to be very clear. For instance, you can say, I need someone who addresses problems directly within 24 hours rather than gossiping. That is specific, and that's non-negotiable cultural value. You need someone who takes initiative to improve processes without being asked. That is specific. That drives your culture. That is non-negotiable for you. Or you need someone who maintains warm eye contact and remembers patient names. These are very specific. You're not telling people to be innovative. You're not telling people to be kind. You're not telling people to be passionate. You are very specific on what your non-negotiables are. So that's the second thing you look for and you put on your document. The third thing you have to put on your document is the success metrics, because you need to be able to give this role a very clear 90-day success profile. So what does success look like? And you need to be very specific again here. You want patient satisfaction scores to go to go above 4.5 out of 5, for instance, right? Or you want insurance verification errors rate to be below, let's say, 2%. Or you want the schedule to be filled 85%, at least 85% capacity at all times. These are very specific things that you have to be able to put in your document. And then in the 2023 study, the Journal of Healthcare Management found that practices with quantified onboarding success metrics had 41% lower turnover in the first 2 years. These are backed by research, and you have to understand that what I'm presenting to you today, again, as it might blow up in your face, but if you do it, your chances of bringing in a successful hire is way higher than leaving everything to chance. Now, the interview that actually predicts performance, right? Because we have traditional interviews that are always terrible predictors of job performance. The research from American Psychological Association shows that unstructured interviews have only a 14% accuracy rate in predicting job success. So here's your framework. This is what I call the behavioral triangle interview system, right? 1, you need to ask questions about their past performance. Anytime you have an interview with anybody, so tell me about your time when you give them a scenario. For a clinical hire, for instance, you say, tell me about a time when you disagreed, for instance, with the treatment decision a doctor made, and how did you handle it, right? When you have someone like an administrative hire, you can say, tell me about a time when a patient was upset about a bill. Walk me through your exact conversation, because these are very important things that are going to tell you 3 things. They will specify, and you have to listen to those 3 things. When you have people who are giving you vague answers, these are red flags. When you have people who lack ownership, so they are always blaming others when they start talking about some of these things, that's a red flag. And when you have people who do not grow from the experience, they had very bad experience and did not grow from it, that's another experience. So this is the first point in the behavioral triangle interview. Past experience. The second point is skills assessment. Don't just judge them by what they say they can do. Watch them do it. You have to have people come and do walk through. You have to have people come and do working interviews, because this is helpful for you to actually see them at work. And most of the time, when you look at the studies, especially the one from Harvard, it shows that work sample tests are 29% more predictive of job performance than interviews alone. And so you have to make the time, especially when you're looking at clinical stuff, for them to walk through. The third arm of that triangle is cultural fit scenarios. So you have to present real life situations. For example, you say you overhear two team members complaining about a policy change in the break room. You agree with their concerns. What do? Right? Listen to what they have to say. There's no right answer, but their response will show you their values around loyalty, will show you their values around direct communications, and will show you how the problem solve. Okay, so stuff like that you need to. These are the three arms of the triangle. Now look at compensation. Compensation is very important, because most of the time people don't follow a specific framework, and a lot of the time the tendency for you to want to lowball any employee is very, very high. Now you need to be competitive. You need to stay within the 60th to 70th percentile if you want to be competitive in the market with the base pay. Now, according to a 2024 survey by the American Association of Healthcare Administrative Management, 68% of healthcare employees ranked clear growth path as more important than the highest base pay. So that means when you actually offer people a clear growth path, they actually are able to they prefer that to a higher base pay. They want to be able to see some growth in what they're trying to do. So this is the framework. You need to start with a competitive base, which is your first layer. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics data is, don't try to lowball by 20% thinking you will save money. So when you look at this research from the University of Pennsylvania, they found that healthcare practices paying in the bottom quartile for their region experienced 3 to 3.2 times higher turnover, costing them an average of $47,000 more annually if they had paid the market rate. So as I said, pay between the 60th to 70th percentile of your market rate, not less and not more. Stay within this range and you'll be fine. The second layer to this is performance bonuses, and you have to tie this into a time frame. So if it's quarterly, you have to be able to, somebody has to know, okay, in addition to what I'm paid as a base, if I also perform very well, I have the opportunity to be able to earn this amount of money. And the fourth layer is the quality of life benefits. Okay, sorry, the third layer is the quality of life benefits, and you have to be able to let people know you are flexible to accommodate some of their scheduling needs if they come up. They have additional PTO, mental health breaks. These are expensive. This could be very expensive, but you have to be able to somehow find a way to build a model around it to make it important. And the last fourth point, which is the growth investments, is that the continuing education. People knowing that you are willing to invest in their growth is very important for them in the onboarding process. And then you have to now go on to, now you have the person, they are coming in. How do you set expectations during your onboarding? Because the first 90 days determines everything. And research from the Society of Human Resource Management shows that employees who go through structured onboarding are 58% more likely to remain with the organization after 3 years. So the 90-day onboarding blueprint: immersion. Start from week 1. Shadow every role for half a day. Review mission, values, patient care philosophy. Complete all compliance training. End of week check-in. You have to be able to check in with this person. Week 2 to 4, supported independence. Begin primary responsibility with direct supervision. Daily 15-minute check-ins. Weekly written feedback. Make sure you are intentional about this. Week 5 to 8, monitored autonomy. Fully responsible for spot check oversight. Bi-weekly check-ins. You have to be able to do this. Weeks 9 to 12, full integration. Complete independence in core role. 90-day formal review, and then you're able to give this person very clear decisions. Now, here's what most entrepreneurs get wrong. They hire when they are drowning. But the best time to hire is when you are at about 80% capacity, not 120%. So the research about this and what you need to know or see is important, and you need to be able to look at these triggers. For instance, what is the trigger for you to hire a full-time employee? First of all, you need to consistently be working 50 plus hours weekly for 3 consecutive months. This is when you realize that you need a full-time person. You are turning away new patients due to capacity, then you know you need a new person. Your revenue can cover the full-time salary plus 30% overhead at least 6 months. These are the triggers for you to start considering a full-time person. When do you consider a part-time person? You need 20 or fewer hours of support weekly. The role has natural boundaries like weekends only, so you don't need someone out there all week. Or you are testing whether the function is needed before committing. This is when you look at part-time people. And when do you look at contracting external vendors or external consultants who may help you? You know the work is specialized and is needed sporadically, like bookkeeping, like marketing, like IT. These are things that you have to now look for sources outside. Now you have the role that requires expertise beyond what you can afford full-time, and you're in startup mode and need to preserve capital. These are the times when you contract or give these responsibilities out to freelance contractors or consultants. Now, remember that your first hire sets the DNA for your entire organization culture. Every person who comes after will either be attracted to or repelled by the standards you set with employee number 1. So I'll leave you with this. In a 10-year longitudinal study of healthcare practices, those that spent 40 plus hours preparing for the first hire, which is defining their roles, putting a structure to the interview system and onboarding plan, had 67% better outcomes than those who rushed the process. And this is information that you will need going into this. So next week we'll be diving more into some of these conversations, but I always appreciate you joining us on this episode. Thank you and have a wonderful day.